Hi everybody, it's Dr. Amy Myersss back with the Autoimmune Summit. Today I am pleased to announce we have Dr. Terry Wahls with us. I'm sure many of you all are familiar with her and her amazing story of recovery, so we're going to hear all about that today. Dr. Wahls actually is a clinical professor at the University of Iowa and also is a staff physician at the Iowa City Veteran Affairs, where she's currently teaching and working with medical students and fellows, as well as doing her research with the Wahls Protocol. And as many of you all probably know, she is the author of the Wahls Protocol, a recent book about how she beat MS. So welcome, Dr. Wahls. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, really glad that you're here. Well, let's get started. For those who have not ever heard your story, because it's so powerful and incredible, love to just hear your own personal story with MS and how, what you did to recover from that.
Sure. So in 2000, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis on the basis of a history of visual dimming 13 years earlier, a new problem with my left leg, lesions in my spinal cord, abnormal spinal fluid. I saw that within 10 years, half of people will not be able to work because of severe fatigue, and a third have problems walking, needing a cane, walker, or wheelchair. I had 2 young kids as the main breadwinner for our family. So naturally, I wanted to treat my disease very aggressively. I sought out the best MS center I could find, which was the Cleveland Clinic, saw their best people, took the newest drugs. Still, within 3 years, my disease had transitioned to secondary progressive MS. In that form of the disease, you expect continual decline. So therefore, I took the recommended chemotherapy. I got the tilt recline wheelchair. I even took that miracle drug, Tysabri, but continued to slowly decline. And I thought conventional medicine was not going to be able to stop the slide into a bedridden and possibly demented life. That's when I began reading the science myself, starting with the animal models for MS, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, Lou Gehrig's disease, dementia. And I found some studies using vitamins that have been helpful. So I started adding these vitamins and supplements that slowed the steepness of my decline. And I'm going to back up just for a moment.
Sure.
In 2002, I discovered Lauren Cordain's work and had gone to a paleo diet, driving grains, legumes, and dairy after years of being a vegetarian.
I was a vegetarian too for 27 years. I don't remember that as part of your story.
It was about 20 years.
Wow.
And so, big decision to go back to eating meat.
Yeah.
And I did, but I continued to decline. I stayed on the paleo diet. I added vitamins and supplements, maybe slowed the speed of my decline. The summer of 2007, I discovered the Institute for Functional Medicine, took their course, Neuroprotection, had a longer list of vitamins and supplements that I was taking. And then I had a very important realization. I should get this long list of nutrients from my food. So that was more research. But by the fall of 2007, I was reorganizing my paleo eating plan into what I now call the Wahls diet to maximize intakes of those nutrients I knew my brain needed. And that's when the magic began. 3 months later, my fatigue was gone. 6 months, I'm walking throughout the hospital without a cane. At a year, I can do an 18-mile bike tour with my family. The following year, I do a trail ride with my family in the Canadian Rockies. And then the following year, I have changed my research program, and I start our first clinical trial using essentially the Wahls diet, the Wahls protocol, with others with progressive MS. And we have some published data from that trial now.
Yeah, such an incredible story. We run in the same circles. I've heard you speak a couple of times. We're friends, but I had never heard the part about you being a vegetarian in all of your talks. So that's
oh yeah.
Or maybe you did, but I was vegetarian for 27 years. So and then got autoimmune, and then my protocol is somewhat similar to yours and based on paleo principles as well. And I just remember that first day, eating that red meat and thinking, oh my God, am I going to be so sick, and what's going to happen to me? And I just remember eating it, and the next day like being, where's more? I don't know.
It's a very big transition for many vegetarians when they decide to reintroduce meat. Mm-hmm. It sometimes is easy, and sometimes it's fraught with a lot of difficulty for them.
Well, it still is for me. I mean, I know, and we'll get into it. You have a very, varied diet of lots of different types of, wild game and things like that, and liver and organ meats. I haven't gotten that far, but I still, you remember telling me the story and seeing my face as you were talking about liver, but I still have to, it's hard for me to like bite into a hamburger or a steak. I really have to like eat it, as like taco meat where it's, cause it was a texture thing for me, and then became environmental and then health and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so I didn't, or if you've said that in all of your talks, I just, I didn't hear it or whatnot. So, and one of the other things that I love when you're giving your talk is how you had researched and you found all these, studies with mice and rats, and then you say how you just kind of translated those little micro doses into adult dosages of things.
And it took a while to sort of find the research to help me translate mouse-sized doses to human-sized doses.
Yeah.
And then go through my med list for drug interactions, et cetera. So it was a complicated process. But after I did the first couple times, I figured out how to do this. It went more smoothly. So absolutely. I was doing a lot of self-experimentation beginning in 2000. Well, with the diet 2002, and then with vitamin supplements, I began in 2004.
So what do you think the difference was? So here you were, you changed your diet, and then you started taking a lot of supplements. So, there's this whole theory that, it's not always just the macronutrient or the micronutrient, which we'll have you get into in isolation when we take a supplement. It's actually how it interacts in its whole form, that could be more synergistic or be doing. Did you feel like that was kind of the missing piece?
I think that is the missing piece. I think supplements are probably mostly from China, so you have to worry about the purity and reliability of the supplements. Many of them are synthetically made. Many of them are made in the processes using genetically modified bacteria, and that's something a lot of practitioners are not aware of. So they're not biologically the same as what occurs in the food supply. Mm-hmm. Then, in addition, what occurs in the food supply has many more related compounds that are all biologically active and probably interacting with their cell biochemistry in very helpful ways. So I think having the ratios correct, having the related biologic compounds, and not having synthetic compounds which have slightly different shapes is probably very huge. Furthermore, it's the ratio of zinc to copper, the ratio of iodine to selenium, the ratio of vitamins A, D, E, and K that are interact. And as soon as I take a supplement, I can get those ratios out of alignment and not have as favorable impact.
Right. So just kind of getting back to the basics, why don't we tell people what is a micronutrient, what is a macronutrient, and then we can dig a little further.
Absolutely. So macronutrients are the fat, carbohydrate, protein. And then the micronutrient is the molecule itself. So that might be the mineral molecules, the essential fat molecules, the vitamin and antioxidant molecules. There's another term that can be a little bit confusing. It's the minerals that we take in macro levels, which are milligram or gram requirements, and micronutrient mineral needs, which are in much smaller microgram, picogram levels.
And were there certain macro and micronutrients that you found for yourself that you were deficient in? Are there ones that you found in your research and working with patients that are kind of consistent across chronic disease and specifically autoimmunity?
I'll talk about the macronutrients. And there's a huge debate: how much fat, how much carb, how much protein. Are we better off being in ketosis, which is a very high-fat diet? And when I look at the literature for what people are who are still in our relatively wild state, that is hunter-gatherers who are still not interacting much with modern society, not changing their food or the eating patterns. We see in those wild habitats that there's a very large variation with the percent fat, percent protein, percent carbs. We have the Inuit in the far north that have a 90% fat diet. We have the Catawbans that have a 60% carbohydrate diet, and most folks are somewhere in the middle. Mm-hmm. What that tells me is our metabolism, our mitochondria, can burn fat, protein, or carbs. We have a wide tolerance, which lets us live in a wide variety of spaces in terms of what foodstuffs are available. In the societies, we're always very consistent. They would select foodstuffs that gave them a micronutrient content that exceeded our RDA 6 to 10-fold. So my interpretation of that data is that the percent protein, carbs, or fat, we can tolerate a wide variability. What we need, though, is maximal nutrient density, maximal intake of our vitamins and minerals, and we should be looking for 2 to 10-fold times the RDAs, because that's what our brothers and sisters who are foragers and hunters were able to do. Mm-hmm. And so with those standards in mind, that's how I created my program. Using, basically, there were 31 nutrients that we tracked that brain cells need. And so I designed food rules and food plans to maximize those 31 nutrients with the goal of hitting 2 to 10-fold of the RDAs. So it looked very similar to our wild hunter-gatherers.
And so, you know, I've heard you speak, and just in doing what I do, I know this. Our soil is depleted. We've altered our food. You know, there's not the same nutrient content in our food that there was, you know, certainly when we were hunter-gatherers and even when our, you know, grandparents were alive. So, I mean, how much food is somebody eating? What does that look like for somebody?
So we track this based on my size. So as you know, I'm really quite tall, 6 feet. So that'd be comparable to what men could probably do. So for tall women and men, it's 9 cups of vegetables, 6 to 12 ounces of meat, preferably, which includes organ meat, and you also want to have seaweed. And then I progress people through the diet. They could get progressively more rigorous. I also want to make the observation that we did create a plan that reaches out to our vegetarian friends and vegan friends. So we can improve their nutrient density, decrease the risk of anti-nutrients, and decrease the autoimmune risk for them as well.
Great, great. So tell us what really does that look like in a day? I mean, I think when we were talking, you know, for you, that was, I think you told me you'd eaten 150 varieties of, you know, plants, right, berries, veggies, you know. What is the average person eating? And then what are you hoping somebody on your diet's doing? And then what are you doing? Because I know you have access to all kinds of, you know, wild game and fun things that antelope or something.
Yeah, antelope. So the typical American has probably 70% of our calories from white sugar and white flour, which is, of course, why we are so micronutrient depleted. And if we do eat vegetables, it's peas, corns, carrots, maybe broccoli, maybe cauliflower, maybe garlic.
Potatoes.
Well, potatoes, but that's really a starch.
No, I agree, but they're considering it a vegetable.
But they're considering it a vegetable. So they have very little diversity in their diets. So I stress you want diversity and try and shoot for 200 different species in a year, and it's sort of fun to keep track. And you want things fresh, in season, local, if you can afford it, organic. If you can't afford it, then we talk about the environmental working group to help sort that out.
All right.
And I help them organize the diet by these big categories: green leafy vegetables, sulfur-rich vegetables in the cabbage family, onion family, mushroom family, and deeply pigmented vegetables and berries. And to be pigmented, I want color all the way through. So an apple, bright red, white on the inside, does not count. It's a very starchy fruit. Same thing with pears, same thing with apples. You can have them, but after your 9 cups. And for most people, they're not eating 9 cups. And then we want sufficient protein, 6 to 12 ounces. As I said, preferably some organ meat in there as well, and seaweed. Now, for me, I've gone on to the ketogenic version of my diet, so I eat just twice a day. And in the morning, I'll have typically some coconut milk. And right now I'm going out to my garden and taking off a big stalk of lettuce, and I rotate through the lettuce, spinach, and mustard. So I have a green smoothie in the morning, And then I have leftover meat. So I had salmon last night. So I had some leftover salmon this morning, and green tea. That's my breakfast. And I go off to work. I'm perfectly happy. I'm not hungry. I'm not shaky. Everything is fine. I have plenty of energy. So, and I bike to work. And then
Awesome.
I bike home. And then I'll have either another big salad, green smoothie, or cooked greens. So I have a second batch of greens. Now I'm going to have a big batch of sulfur-rich vegetables. So perhaps I'll make a big batch of cauliflower rice or mushrooms and garlic. Then I'll have whatever meat I'm having. Tonight probably is going to be some ground beef mixed in with peppers for color as well. And then now my berries are coming in, so I'll be going out to my garden and pick a lovely bowl of fresh raspberries. And then I'll probably have some chamomile tea and coconut milk for my evening meal.
And so you're not doing lunch? No snack, no nothing. Wow.
No lunch, no snack, no nothing. And I need to stress, I'm not hungry. I'm perfectly fine. There's no shakiness, plenty of energy. If there's a social reason that expects me to eat because I'm meeting my staff or something, I certainly can. But once you're in the ketogenic version of the diet, your blood sugar is very, very smooth. There's very little cravings going on.
Mm-hmm. And so how long did it take you to get to that place?
Well, it sort of depends on how we look about this. I changed my diet first in 2002. Then we changed it again in 2007 into what I call the Wahls diet. Mm-hmm. Then in 2012, I began getting intrigued with ketogenic diets and wanted to figure out, could I create a nutrient-dense ketogenic diet? Because there's a lot of benefit for ketosis, but it's extremely hard to have it be as nutrient-dense as I'm used to eating. Mm-hmm. So that took a couple of years to get organized and to find a way to hybridize ketogenic diets and the Wahls diets that are so maximally nutrient dense. Mm-hmm.
And so when you're doing the 9 cups, you do that, measure that 9 cups raw, and then you put it in your smoothie, or 9 cups raw, and then you slightly saute it if you want it sauteed or cooked?
Right. So it's 9 cups raw, and then you cook it out, it's going to shrink down.
Right.
So it's not going to be 9 cups once it's cooked.
Right.
And you can have it cooked or raw.
So let's talk about mitochondria. You kind of mentioned that word, and I don't know if, other people have thrown it around, but I know you wrote a great piece on minding your mitochondria. So tell us what are mitochondria, what their importance is, and then how, these macro and micronutrients are playing a role with them.
So about 1.5 billion years ago, the Earth was covered with a terrible poison, wiped out, I believe, about 90% of life. And that poison was oxygen. And it turned out there was one set of bacteria that could utilize this oxygen more effectively to generate ATP, which is the power that drives the chemistry of life. And these new efficient bacteria were engulfed by larger bacteria, and they developed a very cooperative relationship that would become the forerunners of all of our mitochondria. Over time, these organisms became multicellular, became animals, mammals, and then primates, and then, of course, us. All of our cells have these little ancient bacteria that help manage the energy supply for the cell. And the cells that need the most energy, such as brain, retina, and heart, will have about 10,000 mitochondria per cell.
Wow.
And clinically, when I see people suffering from fatigue, brain fog, problems with their retina, problems with heart failure, I interpret that as mitochondria that have been starved of the building blocks or poisoned, and they need a mitochondrial tune-up, such as what I described with the Wahls protocol.
And so how exactly, can you tell us the mechanism or walk us through how the protocol is giving your mitochondria a tune-up?
Sure. So what do mitochondria need? You and I had to memorize all those reactions in medical school, but we never got taught which things we had to eat to make sure those reactions could happen. And it turns out we need basically all the B vitamins. We need a terrific supply of minerals, magnesium, zinc, sulfur in particular. We need a very rich supply of antioxidants to scoop up the free radicals that get generated in the mitochondria. And we need a terrific supply of fat because the membranes in the mitochondria are dependent on cholesterol, saturated fat, omega-6 fat, and omega-3 fat. And with this low-fat craze that we have, many people have become so fat-starved that their cell membranes are suffering and the mitochondria are suffering as a result.
And so when your mitochondria, oh, go ahead. Did you have more that you were?
Well,
go ahead.
So those are the particular micronutrients.
Mm-hmm.
And then in my book, I explain in detail where they are in the food supply so people understand why I've constructed the diet the way I have.
Okay. And so how does a nutrient deficiency translate into the mitochondria not working, just by those reactions that are keeping them stable?
So if you don't have enough fats, then you won't have enough of the cell membrane proteins that run the electron pump. So you can't generate the ATP as efficiently. If you don't have enough of the B vitamins or the minerals, you can get stuck at various places in the electron transport chain. And so you just don't generate the energy as efficiently. How that is experienced for the person, worsening fatigue, worsening dependence on energy drinks and caffeine to try and get them through the day. They'll begin to have problems with memory, with focus, with word finding, with recall. Again, it's because the energy production has been seriously hampered.
And I'm sure you see as well in your research, I mean, this is also the thought behind, most chronic diseases, right? I mean, certainly things like neurodegenerative diseases, autoimmune diseases, even cancer, we believe, is really coming from these, from depleted mitochondria.
Yeah, when we look at the cellular level in the biochemistry of our chronic diseases, which are all very distinct, and scientists is increasingly surprised when we look at the cellular level, the mechanisms are remarkably similar. There's too many free radicals, evidence that the mitochondria are strained and not generating energy efficiently, and there's excess and inappropriate inflammation. And toxin burden makes all of the inflammation worse and makes the free radical generation worse. And that's whether you have obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes, neurological problems, mental health problems, autoimmunity, or cancer. It's shocking. At the cellular level, the diseases are looking more and more alike. Which you and I understand, because the root cause of the problems are usually nutrient deficiency, food sensitivities, and overloaded toxins.
So, and another word that people are kind of throwing around throughout the summit, and I know you haven't specifically mentioned this word, but is epigenetics. Can you kind of explain what is epigenetics and how that relates? Yes.
So, I'm such an old geezer that when I went to medical school, we learned about the genome project. When we would sequence the DNA, we would have the keys to the galaxy, because then we'd know why we developed all those chronic diseases, and we could fix them. Well, it turned out, of course, that we were wrong, that the DNA is just the starting, because every aspect of our environment is interfacing with my DNA, turning genes on, turning genes off, and shifting how I run the chemistry of life. And if it happens early, when you're an embryo, it will shift the appearance and performance of the organism in addition to how the chemistry is run. The scientific term for how the environment talks to my DNA, turning genes on and off, is epigenetics. So it's the food, it's the toxins, it's the relationships, it's the exercise level, it's the status of my hormones, it's even my thoughts, and the self-talk. It's wonderfully exciting, it's profound, and for the vast majority of diseases, 95% or even more of the factors of why I'm getting that disease is how the environment, my diet, lifestyle choices, have turned my genes on and off, which means I could make different choices, turn on different genes, and shift back towards a healthier and healthier way of doing the chemistry of life and a healthier, more resistant, disease-resistant body.
And so, oh, go ahead.
I say it's probably why in my clinical trials and in my clinics, when people come back, they keep looking younger and younger and younger. Now, I've been doing this for 7 years. I know people will start aging sometime soon.
Yeah.
So far, they're still getting younger.
I know. I experienced the same thing in my clinic. I'm like, wow, you look amazing. So what are some of those common commonalities that you have seen in your clinic and in your trials as to be the epigenetic influences for autoimmunity? You kind of briefly touched on it already, but...
The biggest epigenetic factor of all, from what I'm seeing in the research, is the food that we eat. Are we eating food that's maximally nutrient dense? Are we getting plenty of thiol groups, those are the sulfur-rich vegetables? And are we getting plenty of those antioxidants? Those food groups talk to my genes deeply and will shift how my chemistry of life runs. And so I can either be very pro-inflammatory or very reparative. And 9 cups of vegetables are going to put you in the reparative state.
Awesome.
If you have the right vegetables, green sulfur color.
Right. And so what is the state of your research right now after the books come out? I think you recently got some pretty big funding.
So very exciting stuff is happening. So in 2009, we started our protocols. It was such a radical new type of intervention that the IRB told me that we could enroll 10, put them through, give a safety report, and if we showed that it was safe, then we could do the next 10. So our first paper that went out was on the first 10. We could show that, yes, people could do the diet and lifestyle choices that I did, that the side effects were minimal. The most significant one being that if you're overweight or obese, you lost weight without being hungry, got back to a healthy body weight. And that the fatigue severity scale, which goes from 1 to 7, 1 equaling no fatigue, dropped by 2.38 points from 5.70 at baseline to 3.32 at 12 months. For p-value of 0.0008. And this is the largest reduction in fatigue that's been reported to date. By comparison, the best studies that have used drugs for Vigil, medication that I'd used for 5 years, they had an improvement of 0.075 for a p-value of 0.07, which is not significant, but certainly a favorable trend. Now, when we had the group of 20, our p-value gets even more striking. But we haven't published that data yet, so I can't comment other than to say fabulous results. Our PhD student defended her dissertation this week, reviewed some of the very exciting data that we have on fatigue, gait, and MRI findings. That'll be very exciting papers. And I have more studies underway looking at just exercise and e-stim impact, and another looking at just diet impact. And we are writing grants for the next grant cycle using our preliminary data. It's a very exciting time.
And so far, your research is exclusively with progressive MS?
We're now including relapse and remitting MS as well.
Okay, but it's all with MS?
All with MS.
But your protocols could be used for anybody with any type of autoimmunity and likely most chronic disease.
Absolutely. So I'm writing grants with other researchers here at the university. We've submitted a grant using the protocol with fibromyalgia.
Oh, great.
We've not heard that yet. I'm talking to people about developing a grant with Parkinson's, so that's very early. And again, I'm having some conversations about my protocol for diabetes because, I have thousands of followers, and we have many, many folks with diabetes who have reported adopting the protocol, reversing their diabetes, and being able to get off all of their diabetic and hypertensive meds.
That can be your next book.
Well, I think so.
And so tell us about e-stim, because I know that that's a big part of your book and was a big part of your recovery. So I'm sure, even though the summit is about autoimmunity in general, those who are suffering from neurodegenerative, I cannot speak today, as well as MS and things like that, how important e-stim was for you. So I guess first tell us what that is and then how it worked for you.
E-stim is electrical stimulation of muscles. You use a electrotherapy device, put electrodes on what's called the motor points, so two places over the muscles, turn on current. Electrical current gets delivered through the skin to the muscle, driving a muscle contraction. And you control how much current, so how uncomfortable this becomes. And you have the electrically driven contractions occur while you're doing your exercise. It increases the release of nerve growth factors and muscle growth factors. Also increases the release of endorphins, which lower inflammation, enhance moods, and makes exercising a little bit easier to do. So I see it as a way of accelerating the speed of recovery. In my experience, the dietary interventions do a terrific job of addressing fatigue, brain fog, energy, overall quality of life, and mood. If you want to change motor capacity, so improving the strength, coordination of your arms, legs, balance, that's required physical training. And depending on the person's level of disability, working with a physical therapist, athletic trainer will help. Working with e-stim is a way of adding on a protocol that athletes have used for decades to improve the effectiveness of their physical training. We find that some people find the e-stim very uncomfortable, intolerably so, probably because they have had damage to how their brain and spinal cord perceive pain. Some people find it to be a very helpful way of getting more exercise. Some do not.
Go ahead.
This is not approved for clinical indications. And I talk about the challenges of getting a test session, in that you may have to buy this device as you would athletic equipment and pay for the training to learn how to use it and to have the program designed for your unique set of weak muscles and muscle imbalance issues.
Yeah, that was my next question, is that this is people are going somewhere for this e-stim, or this is something you can purchase for your home, and then how does someone know how to use that?
Well, I talk about it in the book. There are ways of purchasing it at home, but you'll still want to have someone teach you how to use it, and most importantly, design the program based on your physical exam, your strength, etc.
And is there a website or something in the book, or that comes with the machine that has people who are trained in this that could, potentially come over, or how does somebody sort all that out?
Find a physical therapist or an athletic trainer who uses e-stim in their practice.
Okay.
You really need to have somebody do an exam of you, the person, to understand what muscles are strong, what muscles are weak, to design both an exercise program and an e-stim program to address those unique issues. Mm-hmm. This is not something you can do on your own. You really need some guidance. And somebody has to examine you.
Right. And can you just order one of those on your own, or you need a prescription to order it, or?
There are over-the-counter devices that have far less power than the prescription device. Uh-huh. So you will not get very much current. You won't get nearly the effect of stimulating nerve growth factor, muscle growth factors. Mm-hmm. So the prescription ones are going to be much more effective at increasing muscle size and generating those nerve growth factors in the brain.
And so I would imagine that also could be used, again, for other types of diseases,
Absolutely. And I talk about that in my book, the growing number of disease states that have research now showing how the e-stim has been helpful for things like rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis, obesity, heart disease, lung disease, cerebral palsy, stroke.
Awesome.
And now, of course, I'm publishing literature with MS.
Right, right. And so how often was that a daily practice for you, several times a day practice, as much as one can tolerate?
So the FDA would generally have you do this about an hour a day, up to an hour for muscles that are particularly weak. And my physical therapist told me I could do 15 minutes a day to maintain strength, 45 minutes to an hour to increase strength. And he designed which muscles I should start with. As I became more comfortable with that, I increased what I was doing to other muscles, and I incorporated it into my daily activities.
And is it something you still use today to maintain, or no, because you're biking and all the other?
So I'm so strong now that I no longer require it. I do strength training, I do yoga. I've started jogging. I'm up to a mile and a half, and I'm biking. So I was doing this very, very intensively for 4 years, and then I was able to taper off as I was able to do more strength training.
And have you seen this? I mean, just because I've had a couple of people, actually a recent patient who had multiple back surgeries and then now is having some muscle weakness, and he's just in the beginning of his workup, so that we're trying to sort out if he has, polymyositis or some sort of autoimmune weakness, or is this sort of, botched surgeries or just surgeries that because of so many nerves have been cut and stuff like that. So just as I'm listening to you, I'm like, oh, I'm writing down, I need to talk to him about maybe getting that. I mean, have you found those types of situations, back surgeries and things?
That is helpful. That can be extremely helpful when there's an acute weakness to a muscle group for back surgery, MS, idiopathic. Get them to a physical therapist and ask for evaluation for E-stim. The sooner you do it, probably the quicker the recovery is possible.
Well, so obviously your story in and of itself is an amazing success story, but are there any others that you'd like to share with us?
Sure. One of the people who went through our study needed a cane, short distances, rollating walker, long distances. So she's completed the 3 years. She's graduated. She sent me a postcard telling me that when we met, she struggled to drive the 5 miles to work, and she was working half-time. She's now able to drive 6 hours to see her grandchildren, and she's able to take her dog for hikes for 6 to 10 miles, and she can do weightlifting, Pilates, and she can jog. That's a pretty phenomenal success.
Awesome.
And I have another person who had secondary progressive MS, like the person I just told you, was so ill she needed to have a personal attendant all the time. No longer needs a personal attendant, is driving again, is back in the workforce. That is phenomenal.
Yeah.
We have a lady with primary progressive MS who is recovered enough that she could do the registered annual Great Bike Ride across Iowa, 450 miles.
Wow.
We have Parkinson's patients who had been tremoring on the couch all day, who sent me a lovely photo of her hiking out in some beautiful park with her dogs. Saying, thank you so much for giving my life back. Jane, who's lost 200 pounds and is off 5 meds for diabetes and hypertension. Brent, who lost 100 pounds, off 4 meds for diabetes and hypertension. And both these folks say they were never hungry. They ate plenty of food, couldn't put more food in their mouth, and they just kept feeling better and better and better.
Mm-hmm. So can you walk through, I mean, either, your book, or if somebody, came to see you in your clinic, what are the first steps? As I know, you can never say how long it takes because everybody's such an individual and everybody's, confounding factors. But can you just kind of give a timeline just on either your own or what you've seen with others, the kind of the steps and then the progression and timeline?
The first thing is to really understand why all this stuff matters. And so the book, that's really the first 3 chapters, explaining functional medicine, conventional medicine, why the protocol is designed the way it is. Because if you're going to go through withdrawal and giving it foods you love, you really need to understand why it's worth all this effort. In the same way, in my clinics, we go through a big orientation group classes, 3 hours to go through all of that. And then they begin the diet, 9 cups of vegetables, gluten-free, preferably grain-free. If you're doing gluten-free grains, no more than 1 serving a day. And that's like a half cup. It's not 10 cups, just a half cup of something. And 6 to 12 ounces of meat. We warn people you'll probably have detox, you're going to have withdrawal, and the first 1 to 4 weeks may feel very uncomfortable. And to warn them about the irritability that comes in. Typically, when people are back at 3 months, they report marked improvement in mental clarity, mood, concentration, reduction in fatigue, more energy. And that steadily improves. Blood sugars, likewise, within 3 months are markedly better. We've been having to work with them to roll back their diabetic medication. Blood pressure, you often have to roll back sometime between 1 and 12 months, depending on the individual. Pain meds typically need less and less over the year. And the cells begin to continue to remodel, repair. And so we see steady improvements in blood pressure, cholesterol, blood sugars, energy, pain over the next 3 years. So I let people know that even if they aren't seeing much in the first year, they may be one of those folks that we're going to be seeing the changes in that 1 to 3 year time period. But for blood sugar, dramatic improvements occur within weeks. Often we're having to make medication adjustments beginning at 2 weeks.
So I guess the take-home point of all of that is, which is also what I tell my patients, you didn't get in this boat overnight. I say, your immune system is like the Titanic. We're trying to turn the Titanic. So for people not to give up hope, right? I mean, and particularly if they're not seeing you and they're just reading your book, that if they're not seeing these instant changes, that, this could take
this is a long
yeah.
It takes, from your mouth to your gut, we replace those cells, about 2 weeks. Our skin once a year, our liver, kidneys once a year, blood vessels, it takes about 3 years, brain 7 years, heart 7 to 10 years, skeleton 20 years. So it depends on what part of your body you're trying to rebuild. And so I remind people it takes a long time, and if it takes 7 to 10 years to rebuild your spinal cord and brain, you shouldn't be discouraged if in the first 1 month, 6 months, not much is happening. Mm-hmm. It takes a long time for your cells to replace all that damage.
Mm. That's good to, kind of a reminder there for people. And I just lost my thought of what I was going to ask you, speaking of brain fog and brain health. What was I going to ask you? It was about... oh my goodness, I haven't ever had this happen yet. Well, anything else you want to say as I'm composing my thought here about all of that?
We need to warn people that the first week to 4 weeks, because of the withdrawal, they may feel worse.
Oh, right.
To not be discouraged. But if it's dramatically worse, they should check in with their doctor to see, is there another acute issue, bladder infection, et cetera, that might be causing the problem.
I remember what I was going to ask you. Do you ever, now that you are where you are in your recovery, do you ever have I know gluten's an absolute no-no for you. There may be other foods, but is there ever it's my birthday, I'm having a gluten-free cupcake, or are you really committed to the ketogenic Wahls protocol? I've gotten this far, I'm not budging.
I have backed off a bit on the ketosis so that if socially I'm with friends and they give me the Wahls diet, that's fine. I'll be happy to eat that. Realizing that there are times I slip out of ketosis for social reasons, and I tolerate that really quite well. I'm certainly not going to have gluten knowingly, because if I do, in 48 hours I have horrific pain.
Wow.
That will be incapacitating. But, if people have made a gluten-free treat for me socially, yes, I may have a small piece.
Yeah. Okay. And then what is your thought or feeling on dairy and raw dairy? Does it make any difference to you, the raw versus cultured versus, sort of conventional?
So, my objection to dairy, and I go over this in my book, is that 80% of those who have a problem with gluten because of the similar amino acid sequence, will react to dairy. So I ask everyone to take that out. If they want to retest, we go over how to introduce that. I do acknowledge that fermented is probably better tolerated. Raw may be better tolerated. With raw, you have to be very careful of where you're getting that because of the public health concerns. That homogenized, pasteurized, change the shape of the molecules, that can create some problems for folks.
Yeah, I completely agree. I typically tell you if you have a dairy issue, if you have a gluten issue, likely you're going to have a dairy issue. And it's just, a good place to start, giving up gluten and dairy.
Give up gluten and dairy. And, I also talk about giving up eggs because many people have a problem with the egg protein as well. And then after you've been off the eggs for at least a month, then you can retest and see how it goes.
Mm-hmm. And so as we, wrap up here, many people can't see you, they can't see me. There's not, functional medicine available to them. So I'm just asking each of the speakers, 3 to 5 things that people can do today on their own to help either prevent or reverse autoimmune disease.
Gluten-free, dairy-free, egg-free, at least for a month, and retest. 9 cups of vegetables, green sulfur color. That will do wonderfully. And it will crowd out the bad stuff. Because once you give up the grains and the proteins, you're going to be hungry. And 9 cups of vegetables will not be so hard to eat.
All right. Well, good advice. Thank you so much, Dr. Wahls. It was a privilege and honor to have you here. And just congratulations and keep up the great work. Thanks for spreading the word. Yeah. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye now.
Bye.